Somewhere off the coast of eastern China, a ship slides into the water that is nearly 400 meters long. Longer than the Empire State Building is tall, if you tipped it on its side. Her deck is wider than a 6-lane highway. Her engine room holds a 2-stroke diesel the size of a small apartment building, burning fuel at a rate that would drain a suburban swimming pool every single day she is at sea. This isn't a concept. This is the MSC Arena, delivered in March of 2023 by Jiangsu Yangzijiang Shipbuilding, and with 24,346 container slots stacked 26 high on her deck, she is the largest container ship ever built. Order her alongside her 5 sister vessels in a single contract, and the full bill runs to well over $1 billion. But here's the strange part. A billion-dollar ship doesn't actually make sense as a ship. It only makes sense as a calculation. A bet that sheer scale, welded into a single floating industrial unit, can crush the per container cost of moving the world's goods so low that nothing smaller can compete. And that calculation is the most ruthless piece of math in modern logistics. At this scale, the economics invert. A 10,000 TEU container ship burns almost as much fuel per nautical mile as a 24,000 TEU vessel. Hull resistance does not double just because you doubled the cargo. The engine is bigger, yes, but the ratio of fuel burned per container per mile drops by nearly a third. Stretch that across an 11,000-mile Asia to Europe run, multiply by the 7. Or 8 round trips a vessel completes in a single year, and you begin to understand why carriers like MSC, Maersk, CMA, CGM, and Evergreen have spent the last decade locked in a quiet arms race of hull length. MSC alone currently has more than 130 ships on order, the largest order book in the industry by a wide margin. The math is brutally simple. A ship this size burns roughly 250 tons of heavy fuel oil per day at cruising speed. At current bunker prices, that is around $150,000 in daily fuel alone. Spread that across 24,000 containers, and the fuel cost per box per day collapses to under $7. A smaller ship carrying 10,000 boxes, burning 2/3 as much fuel, pays nearly twice that on a per container basis. When the Arena sails from Shanghai to Rotterdam fully loaded, the marginal cost of moving 1 container of coffee beans, or semiconductors, or flat pack furniture across the planet drops to a few $100s. No truck, no train, no plane comes within a factor of 20 of that number. But the billion-dollar price tag isn't really about the steel. Steel is perhaps the cheapest part of the bill. The true cost lives in the layers stacked on top of it. You have the 2-stroke MAN or Wärtsilä main engine, each cylinder taller than a grown man, each piston weighing several tons. Precision machined to tolerances measured in microns. You have the hybrid exhaust scrubbers bolted onto the funnel to strip sulfur from the flue gases so the ship can legally enter European and Californian waters under IMO 2020 rules. You have the air lubrication system pumping a continuous curtain of microbubbles beneath the hull to reduce drag by 3 or 4%, a figure that sounds trivial until you multiply it by fuel bills of $60,000 a day. You have shaft generators, energy-saving ducts, variable pitch propellers, and bridge software running collision avoidance algorithms trained on a decade of global tracking data. And increasingly, you have dual fuel engines capable of burning either marine diesel or green methanol, adding another $30 to $50 million per hull for the privilege of being regulation-proof for the next decade. Now consider who actually pays for all of this, because almost nobody in global shipping pays cash. The MSC Arena herself is the perfect illustration. Her registered owner is not MSC. Her registered owner is Bank of Communications Financial Leasing, a Chinese state-linked financial institution that holds the title to the ship and charters her to MSC under a long-term agreement. She flies the flag of Liberia, an open registry arrangement that keeps crewing rules flexible, corporate taxes near zero, and regulatory scrutiny light. The operator, the owner, and the flag state are 3 entirely different entities in 3 different jurisdictions. And that separation is entirely by design. The operator gets the vessel without absorbing the debt. The financier gets a hard asset generating fixed charter payments, backed by collateral that can be repossessed and resold in any port on Earth. The flag state collects its registry fees, Everyone gets a slice, and the risk is atomized across continents. But scale creates its own prison. A 24,000 TEU ship cannot dock just anywhere. She needs a berth with at least 18 meters of water depth, ship-to-shore cranes tall enough to reach 26 container tiers stacked on her deck, and a yard large enough to absorb the 14, or 15,000 boxes she might unload in a single call. Globally, only around 30 ports can handle her. Shanghai, Singapore, Rotterdam, Antwerp, Hamburg, Ningbo, Tanjung Pelepas, a handful of others. That is the entire map, and she cannot transit the Panama Canal at all. She is simply too wide for the new Neo-Panamax locks. The Suez Canal is her lifeline, and anyone who watched the Ever Given wedged sideways in that channel back in 2021, halting nearly $10 billion of daily trade, understands exactly how fragile that lifeline really is. A billion-dollar ship is also a billion-dollar single point of failure. And then there are the behemoths that make even the MSC Irina look ordinary. The All-Seas Pioneering Spirit, a twin-hulled offshore construction vessel built to lift entire oil platforms off their foundations in a single motion, cost roughly $2.8 billion and remains the heaviest ship ever built. In 2017, she plucked Shell's 24,000-ton Brent Delta topsides off its legs in the North Sea in one lift. Shell's Prelude, a floating liquefied natural gas plant anchored off the coast of Australia, cost an estimated $12 billion. A floating factory longer than 4 football fields, processing gas at sea because laying a pipeline back to shore would have cost even more. These are not ships in the traditional sense. They are industrial infrastructure with a hull welded around them. And they exist only because the alternative, building the same capability on land and routing the world's cargo to it, would cost more still. This is the part that operators and financiers understand, and most outside observers do not. A billion-dollar behemoth is never really a vehicle. It is a unit of arbitrage. It exists to exploit a gap between two prices: the price of moving a container versus the price the market will bear. The price of liquefying gas at sea versus the cost of laying thousands of kilometers of pipeline, the price of lifting a platform in a single day versus the price of dismantling it piece by piece over a year. If that gap is wide enough, the ship prints money. If the gap closes, if global trade contracts, if fuel regulations shift faster than retrofits can keep up, if a new generation of smaller, smarter, autonomous vessels suddenly becomes more economical, the ship becomes a stranded asset worth less than the scrap value of her hull. History already has a warning carved into it. In 2016, Hanjin Shipping, once the 7th largest container carrier in the world, filed for bankruptcy protection almost overnight. Nearly 100 of its ships were stranded at sea, some for months because ports refused to unload them without guarantee of payment. Containers full of Christmas electronics sat rotting offshore while lawyers fought over who owned what. The ships did not disappear. They were simply seized, repainted, and rechartered to competitors within a year. The company died. The steel kept sailing. That is the bet every owner signs up to when they wire the first payment to the shipyard. They are not buying steel. They are buying 25 years of exposure to global trade volumes, fuel markets, interest rates, carbon taxes, and geopolitics. $1 billion placed on a single floating asset, secured by nothing but the continued appetite of a planet that consumes goods faster than it can make them. When the math works, it builds dynasties. When it breaks, it takes banks down with it. Because at the end of the day, $1 billion shipping behemoth is not really a ship at all. It is a leveraged claim on the future of civilization. And the only people who truly understand the weight of that bet are the ones quietly cashing the charter payments while the rest of the world stands at the port and marvels at the size of the boxes.